500,000 cameras watch the streets of London. Pulling off a major heist here and walking away unseen should be virtually impossible. And yet, in 2015, a small group of people broke into the very heart of the British capital, the vaults at Hatton Garden, and pulled off what may be one of the largest robberies in the country's history.
Reporting a heist at the Hatton Garden safe deposit company here in London.
Hundreds of police were involved. The police are not commenting on anything like that at this stage, so we do not know their identities.
Grand heists felt like something from another era. The 30s, the 60s, the late 90s. By 2015, technology had changed the rules. Security systems, guards, and CCTV had become sophisticated, expensive, and reliable. An old-school thief trying to slip through those layers would have been fighting a losing battle, especially in London, a city that ranks among the world leaders for camera density. Roughly one camera for every 10 people. Escaping the eye of the city there borders on the fantastical. And yet, on April 7, 2015, just after the Easter break, staff arriving for their shift at the Hatton Garden Vault found chaos. A room that held hundreds of millions of pounds worth of jewelry and cash had been turned upside down. Safe deposit boxes were opened, furniture smashed, dust and wreckage of tools scattered everywhere. The scene looked like the aftermath of a battle. Detectives from the so-called Flying Squad, the unit that handles big robberies, were called in. The central question was simple and devastating. How? One detail was immediately obvious. The thieves had drilled a hole through a thick wall to reach the vault room. But that explained nothing of the core mystery. How did they get into the building in the first place? How did they haul heavy equipment inside? How did they bypass sophisticated alarm systems and security? And where, finally, had hundreds of millions in gems gone? The investigation quickly suggested they were dealing with professionals. There were no fingerprints, no DNA traces. Forensic teams scoured for blood droplets, hairs, skin cells. Nothing. A bottle of bleach left on the floor told another story. The scene had been cleaned. The thieves had also removed hard drives from the building's CCTV servers, destroying key evidence. But London is full of street cameras, and detectives turned to the city's watchful eye. They began combing footage from cameras in the surrounding streets. They focused on April 2nd, the last working day before the long Easter weekend. The evening footage shows a white van pull up. Two men in high-vis vests walk past the vault. A third man, dressed all in black and hiding his face with a suitcase, follows them. Soon it becomes clear that this man enters the building through the main door, moves to a side exit, and opens it to let the others with the tools in. The next morning, the same people quietly leave the building, get into the van, and drive away. Police trace the vehicle's plates, only to find the van had been bought with forged documents. Most likely, it had already been destroyed. Because the theft was not discovered for several days, the tabloids and public speculation quickly inflated the idea of a perfect operation. Theories ran wild. Eastern European crime syndicates, ex-soldiers, virtuoso lone thieves. When detectives eventually named suspects, the identities shocked everyone. We should be precise about where this all happened. Hatton Garden, a district in central London, and a street that, since the 19th century, has been the heart of Britain's jewelry trade. Diamonds, gold, watches, fine settings. Hatton Garden is where they are made and sold. Today, hundreds of jewelry businesses operate there. Such districts attract not only customers, but also those who would rather take their wealth than buy it. There had been thefts in Hatton Garden long before, in the 19th century and the first half of the 20th. Not headline-grabbing heists, but thefts nonetheless. So in 1949, a vault was installed at 8890 Hatton Garden, a secure underground repository for valuables. It earned a reputation as one of the most trustworthy in Europe, built to withstand not just burglary attempts, but in theory, even bombing. Over the decades, protection grew more elaborate. Alarms, reinforced doors, panic buttons, and police who could reach the site within minutes. From the outset, the investigation put police under intense pressure. Leaks to the press kept interest boiling. The public demanded answers, and time was the enemy. The thieves had every incentive to move the goods quickly. Police had already lost days because the theft was not reported immediately. Identifying suspects from street cameras was hard. Faces were obscured by caps and masks. The white van yielded nothing. False plates. As detectives reviewed more footage, they noticed something odd. On the moment after the first raid, April 3rd, the thieves left with a suspiciously small number of bags. But not all safety deposit boxes had been opened. Official estimates put the haul at 50 to 20 million pounds in diamonds, gold, and cash. Some sources suggested the true figure could be far higher, perhaps approaching 100 million, since a portion of box contents had never been declared. The size of the haul didn't match the number of bags. The operation hadn't gone perfectly. The footage showed the same people back a second time on the evening of Saturday, April 4th. That night, they finished the job. The detectives' biggest break came next. About an hour before the second entry, cameras recorded two familiar men. Their gait and clothing matched people seen earlier at the vault. They climbed into a white Mercedes. Weeks of surveillance later, police traced the car to its owner, 74-year-old pensioner Kenny Collins. That lead opened the whole case. The shocking truth emerged. This wasn't an Eastern European gang, nor was it a unit of ex-soldiers. The Hatton Garden job had been carried out by a group of older British men. All the suspects were peers of Collins, in their 60s and 70s, some nearing 80. A new problem confronted investigators. How do you prove that the biggest heist in Britain's recent history was carried out by a handful of elderly men who left no fingerprints, no DNA, no obvious trace? The story of this heist began years before the crime itself, in 2012. Not far from Hatton Garden lived Brian Reeder, a 73-year-old man who would become the mastermind behind the operation. He grew up in post-war London in a poor family. His first theft came at 11, stealing a can of food. His first prison sentence at 36, a major robbery. Between those two moments stretched decades of crime and escapes from the police. He had been caught only once, in the mid-1980s during the Brinks Mat robbery, one of the most infamous in British history, when thieves made off with tons of gold bars. Reeder served 9 years, the only prison term of his long career. By 2015, he was considered one of the best thieves in the country, though most assumed he had retired. His wife had recently passed away. His health was failing, prostate cancer, chronic pain. Yet 3 years before the heist, he began to plan again. Pulling off something of this scale alone was impossible. Reeder needed a team, and he assembled one through old underworld connections. His partners were Terry Perkins, 66, and Kenny Collins, 71, both veterans of the London underworld with long medical records, diabetes, arthritis, hearing loss. 2 more men would complete the crew, a technician and the muscle. The muscle was Daniel Jones, a former soldier in his late 50s who had spent most of his life behind bars. The final member was a mysterious figure known only as Basil, the man responsible for locks, alarms, and security systems. Together, they began preparing. Years of surveillance revealed the vault's biggest weakness. On holidays and weekends, security guards simply went home. The vault was locked, but completely unattended. The team chose Friday, April 3rd, the start of the long Easter weekend. Then fate seemed to lend a hand. The day before, a massive fire broke out in central London. Smoke filled the streets. Thousands were evacuated and emergency services were stretched thin. Whether that fire was part of the plan remains unclear, but it worked in their favor. The heist of the century truly began on the evening of April 2nd, 2015. By that time, all members had gathered near 8890 Hatton Garden. Some arrived in a white van, others came separately. Brian Reeder, the mastermind, took a regular London bus, using his senior citizen travel pass. At 9:30 p.m., Basil opened the main door with a key and entered. Inside waited another locked door with a digital keypad. How he obtained both the key and the code remains a mystery. Perhaps a bribed guard, perhaps something else. Getting inside the building was only the first and easiest step. The vault was essentially a building within a building, with its own defense systems. Basil unlocked the back door for the rest. Gloves and caps were mandatory. Even a single hair or drop of saliva could reveal DNA and send them straight to prison. The crew brought heavy equipment, including a huge industrial drill, a monstrous machine that could cut through concrete thanks to its diamond-tipped bits. The irony was impossible to ignore. They used diamonds to steal diamonds. Everything went according to plan. The thieves had already removed the internal CCTV hard drives, wiping the building's video evidence. They descended down the elevator shaft, 2 floors underground, to where the vault was located. Picture it: a group of 70-year-old men with arthritis lowering themselves on ropes into a shaft. More absurd comedy than crime thriller. But they weren't there for elegance. They were there for results. Next came the secondary security door, sealed after hours. Opening it wasn't easy. Once moved, it triggered an alarm, giving them 60 seconds to disable it before the security company was alerted. Basil handled the system, and somehow he succeeded. The silence meant success. They cut through the steel grates in the lobby and finally reached the massive vault door. But the system had another layer, a 2-step verification process. If the alarm wasn't cleared by a second code texted to the vault staff, the alert would still be sent. And at that exact moment, as the thieves thought they were home free, a security guard arrived at the building. He checked the front door, saw nothing unusual, and left without calling the police. Luck, once again, was on their side. The crew began drilling. They needed to make several holes in the thick wall to reach the back of the safe deposit boxes. Just one last step: grab whatever they could and disappear. But things went wrong. Behind the wall, they hit a solid rear panel of one of the metal cabinets. They tried to topple it using a hydraulic ram. The ram burst. The cabinet didn't move. 3 years of planning, gone in an instant. By morning, they left empty-handed. At this point, there were 2 options: give up and fade into retirement, or go back and finish the job. Reeder, the mastermind, chose to walk away, but the others pressed on. Daniel Jones found a replacement hydraulic pump, and on April 4th, 2 days later, the gang returned. This time, the machine worked. The cabinet toppled over, and one by one, the men crawled into the vault. Even then, luck stayed with them. Police hadn't yet discovered the breach, but time and stamina worked against them. They had too few bags, too few hands. They cleared only a portion of the boxes, loaded what they could, and drove away. Officially, they stole 15 to 20 million pounds in gold, diamonds, and cash. Some say the true amount was closer to 100 million, counting undeclared or off-the-books jewels. Either way, the scale and precision made headlines. The British press called it exactly what it was: the heist of the century. You could almost call what these men did, their planning, precision, and execution, a form of art. And the greatest enemy of any artist is haste. That, in the end, is what began to destroy them. Let's go back to the moment when police first noticed a white Mercedes on CCTV footage. It was about an hour before the second break-in, on the night of April 4th. During the first attempt, every member of the crew had used transport that couldn't be traced to them: fake registrations, public buses, disposable vans. But on the second attempt, Kerry Collins made one fatal mistake. He drove his own car. Small slip, the kind you'd expect from an amateur, not a seasoned professional. and it would cost them dearly. Inside the building, the thieves had thought of everything. Outside, they'd forgotten one simple fact. It was 2015, and in London, there's a camera on every corner. By following this footage, police soon traced the van and discovered that the Mercedes had been spotted a day earlier at a hardware store on the city's outskirts. Security cameras captured the customer buying a hydraulic pump. No cap, no glasses, no disguise. Didn't take long to identify him. Daniel Jones. With Jones and Collins identified, detectives began surveillance. The golden rule of any criminal operation is simple. Never contact your partners again. But a month and a half later, the old gang broke that rule, and the police hit the jackpot. Investigators not only caught Collins, Perkins, and Reeder meeting in a pub, but also recorded their conversation with a hidden camera. 3 elderly men sitting over pints, casually discussing the job. A lip-reading expert later decoded the footage. Perkins was bragging about how well the pump had worked. That was all the evidence police needed. Within weeks, all 4 main participants in the Hatton Garden heist were arrested. Yet, key questions remain. Where was the stolen loot? And who was the mysterious Basil, the man who disarmed the alarm and opened the doors? For years, no one knew. Then, detectives re-examined the footage and noticed one strange detail: the walk. The man seen on the night of the robbery threw his right foot slightly outward with every step. The same unique gait belonged to Michael Seed, a 55-year-old man, son of a Cambridge professor, no criminal record, no job, no family. A ghost. When police finally raided his small one-bedroom flat on the outskirts of London, it looked like something out of a Sherlock Holmes story. Inside, they found gold and jewelry from Hatton Garden, along with a set of homemade electronic devices. One of them was a DIY mobile signal jammer built from spare parts. Seed himself had never owned a cell phone. He only used a landline. He denied everything, claiming the jewels had been given to him by an old friend, Kenny Collins. But it didn't matter. The court sentenced Michael Seed to 10 years in prison. The others, Collins, Perkins, and Reeder, received between 6 and 7 years. 2 of them were released after 3, under the condition they returned the stolen goods. They never did. Collins soon landed back in jail. Reeder, now in his 80s, awaited a retrial. Perkins died behind bars of diabetes less than a year after sentencing. The majority of the loot has never been recovered. The fire the day of the heist, the possible bribery of a guard, the sophisticated security systems, and the mysterious identity of Basil, all of it fueled endless theories. Some believe there was someone else behind it all, a hidden mastermind who used the old men as a cover. But the truth was probably simpler. During searches, police found a copy of Forensics for Dummies, a literal beginner's guide to crime scene cleanup. That's where thieves had learned to use bleach to wipe DNA evidence. It wasn't genius, it was experience, simplicity, and a lot of luck. The British press called it the last job. And that's exactly what it was. For these men, it wasn't about money, it was about proving, even in their 70s, that they were still alive, still capable, still the best at what they did. They had nothing left to lose. And in a strange way, they succeeded. Because the most daring robbery of the 21st century was carried out by men from the last one.